After university, I started working for a church as a youth worker, and then I was ordained by the church, and then ran the church for 7 years. In that time, I had some problems in my marriage, and a lot of it was to do with me and my fault. I can hold my hands up for that. And my marriage broke down, and I left Birmingham. I felt like I had to get out of the city. I couldn't be around. I left, kind of cut off all the relationships. And my sister said, "You can come and stay with me," but that meant living in her shed down in Barry in South Wales. So I ended up being in this shed as the winter was approaching, and I ended up getting a job in a warehouse, and I would catch the train from Barry to Cardiff at 5 o'clock in the morning, and just couldn't really figure out how I'd come to this, and couldn't really see a way out of it either. So I ended up being there for about 6 months and doing this until my parents said, "Why don't you come and live with us?" And I really didn't want to, because I felt like I'd let them down. I felt like I'd let everyone down. And so I ended up going to my parents, but it was really like hiding out almost. So I walked a lot, just wrote a lot, and just couldn't figure out what was my purpose, like what was I even doing. So this was about a year and a half of looking for jobs, getting rejected, that cycle of just feeling worse and worse, because what I had before was purpose and a sense of, I have something to do in the world, and now I've got nothing to do in the world, and I've completely screwed up my life. And yeah, it was awful. And my parents moved to Bath, and I came with them because it seemed like, well, I didn't have another option, to be honest. About 6 months into living in Bath, I went along to the Abbey one Sunday, and they were talking about a project that happened in the Abbey Vaults, which was a homeless drop-in centre. And there was something in me that just said, I've got to just get out of the house. I've got to go and do something. And so I started volunteering for the Genesis Trust in the project. And I would do 3 days a week, and my job was sort out clothes donations. And when the guys would come in and they wanted clothes or shoes, just help them find what they needed. And that was a real shift for me, because I wasn't just in my own head, and I wasn't just thinking about myself. And actually, it's hard to feel sorry for yourself when you see other people that are going through much worse than you are. And so that just started to make me feel like I had something that I could give. Then one of the deputy managers retired, and the volunteer team, asked me if I would consider trying to be, applying for the job, which I didn't want to do at all. I thought, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. And it was just confidence, just completely low ebb. And they kept kind of nagging me. And eventually I thought, like, okay, well, what have I got to lose? And I got the job, and I just couldn't believe it, because it had been almost 2 years where I hadn't worked. And I don't think people realise how detrimental that is to you, especially if you have worked in the past, and it gives you so much purpose in life. And so I worked there I've worked for Genesis for about 5 years now. So I worked as deputy manager, and then I became the manager of the centre, and now in my current role as a volunteer in Pathways, which is kind of the other end of things. But none of it would have happened if I hadn't had people around me actually telling me that I could do it, because I'd lost that. I didn't believe that I could do anything anymore. I don't even know, even as I think back now, I can't think of one thing that I thought I might do, or that there was an option. It just seemed black, and there was everything that goes along with that. So drinking far too much, suicidal thoughts, all of that stuff, because you just can't see any future, any hope for yourself. So I would say that for me, Genesis saved me. That being part of that as a volunteer and being brought on as staff. And it's the same journey when I became staff of other people, my managers actually saying to me, you can do this, and just rebuilding that confidence. I was fortunate enough that my brother and I could buy a house when we went to Birmingham. So we both went to university at Birmingham at the same time. We bought a house there, which was a 3-bed ex-council house for £68,000 at the time. And I lived in that house for about 10 years, 14 years. And it was nice. I did the garden because I love gardening. And then when I got married, that was the house that my wife and I lived in, my first wife. But it was nice. We had spare bedrooms. We had all the rest of it. Had a big study with lots and lots of books, which was kind of like my den, I suppose, my sort of withdrawal to the world. And then when I left, I had one suitcase, like a rolling suitcase, and like a camping bag, because that's all I could carry. And so what do you take when you leave a life and leave a house? And so I think I took some of the books that I really wanted and took some clothes, but I basically just left everything behind. And I eventually went back and got another couple of boxes of stuff, but it was really of a 3-bedroom full house. There was really nothing left. So when I moved into it was kind of an outbuilding shed. Because what I did is that after I left, I went up into a monastery in the Highlands, and so I spent about a month up in the Highlands of Scotland in this monastery, and that was just escaping. So it was just, I didn't talk to anyone, it was just silence, and it was just, and then when I went down to South Wales and ended up in this shed, it was the first time I'd had my own space for a little while, and I painted it white because it was all just concrete block, and it just felt like, actually, okay, no, I've got somewhere, this is like a little sanctuary. It was my space, and it was very much like a little monk's cell. Actually, I had a bed and a chair, and that was it, and a couple of boxes of books, but everything started going mouldy because we were outside and it was cold, and I would sleep fully clothed in my sleeping bag with a duvet on and be shivering at night, and there were moths everywhere. So it wasn't pleasant, but at the same time it was a little sanctuary. It was somewhere to hide, really, and that was what I thought I needed, was somewhere just to hide, because it was all the shame and everything else. Then moving back to my parents was just awful. I mean, my parents were lovely, absolutely lovely, and I had a room and that kind of thing, but I was just in a room with lots of boxes, living out of suitcases, and I lived like that for 4 years. So it was just, I had stuff that I wanted to unpack, so books that I hadn't looked at since I'd left my old house, and just bits and pieces, and I couldn't see any of it. It was like all my life was just packed away, and so everything was like, you're on hold, it's temporary. When I got remarried, my wife moved in with my parents because we couldn't afford a house in Bath. And again, my parents being very gracious, that sort of worked, but it's a little bit difficult being a newly married couple living with your parents. But we heard about the Curo do a shared housing scheme, and so we looked into that. We didn't know what that was, but basically we could pay get a smaller mortgage and also pay rent to Curo, which I had never heard of before, and now I'm a huge advocate for it. So we registered our interest, and then we got picked. We had to bid on new properties. So the housing development we live in was just being built. We put our name in, and we got a call on a Friday night that we'd been accepted, and we could go and pick the house that we wanted. And so we went and looked around this house, and I just couldn't believe it, and I still can't believe it, kind of 18 months later, because it's a 3-bedroom house that's all brand new. We've got a garden again, and that's something that I completely missed. So I've been able to redo that, and it's almost like we both, my wife and I, are just sort of floating through this house, saying like, I can't believe it. We've got a bedroom, we've got a spare bedroom. So it's almost like it's been full circle of I've regained a home, but I've learned so much along the way. You know, through a lot of my own mistakes, to to actually feel like I have a life again. We do believe that everyone has potential in their life, and through my own personal experience, I know that can be, people can often not believe that about themselves. So we believe that everyone has a hope for the future, potential to transform their life, potential to realise what they want for their own life, and very simply, the idea is just trying to walk alongside people to fulfill their own goals. So people come to us as mentees, and it's completely voluntary. They have to self-refer. They're not getting sent by anyone. But if they want someone to mentor them, they can come and talk to me. We talk about what goals they have, what they would like to do, and that could be anything. So if they decide that they want to go out bird watching, we'll match them with someone that's going to help them go out bird watching, not tell them, no, you need to get back into more education or get a job. So it is very much about a person's own desire for their own life. And then our mentors will work with that person, meet with them once a week for 6 months, 12 months, however long it takes really, for them to reach that goal, and just walk alongside them and keep encouraging them, keep asking good questions. Because I think that's what we all need, is actually, because change is incredibly hard. You know, it's easy sometimes for us to think, oh, you should just get a job or just get a house or just do this. But, you know, if we apply that logic to ourselves and say, well, you should just go to the gym more. Well, we don't though. For some reason, we find a reason not to. So it's about saying change is hard, but actually it may be slightly easier if you've got someone walking with you. That's what Pathways is about.